John Park Board meeting. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3, roll call. Mr. Tyler?
Pat Connolly.
Here.
Mike Moffett.
Here.
Mike Bovat.
Here.
Tyler McLeod present. Wayne Pondinas.
Present.
Nicole Bennett.
Present.
Chris Salatas.
Present.
John Boersma absent. Also present Gabe Hernandez and Russ Vogel.
Thank you. Item 4, approval of minutes for Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. Consideration for approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as posted.
I'll second.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Moving to item 5, new business. Consider an amendment to the agenda. We had previously had on there for the landscaping, item D, and that's going to be removed and put into next month, so consideration for that. Amending the agenda.
Do we have to make a motion on that?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to remove item D. Consider approval broadly, or
I will second that.
which one did we?
Yeah, it was D.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Going on to A, request to purchase Toro Dingo TX 1000. Mr. Tyler?
Yeah, so this was a 2022 budgeted item. I'm submitting it for your approval now. The way inflation is these days, it could go up if we wait another month or two. But I have the 3 quotes for the piece of equipment in your packet there. We received quotes from Alta Equipment, RPM Machinery, and Russo Power. The lowest that came in was Russo Power, which was at $40,062.96. That included the Dingo plus the attachments we identified. You know, a few park uses we see, you know, this being helpful for, you know, whether it be to mulch playgrounds, some sod restoration projects. You know, our community garden that came up this year, you know, we noticed it would be helpful out there. General park projects, I know it's a versatile piece of equipment. You know, there's several attachments that we have included currently there that would be helpful to us. And the cool thing about it is there's other attachments we could add in the future as well, whether it be an auger for tree plantings, a stump grinder. You could even get a little plow blade on it to maybe plow the trail or sidewalks or what have you. The one item that's not included yet was a power rake. That would be for grading and sod restoration projects. It's our understanding that perhaps Public Works might be contributing some funds at a later date to help purchase that attachment, since we do foresee this being a shared piece of equipment with them. But initially, this was going to be maybe another truck for us. We removed that and added this as our equipment for next year, just because we see, you know, we have 3 trucks now that are doing the job. We think this piece of equipment would be more helpful to us immediately.
Okay. Do they speak to like what type of warranty that comes with this, Tyler?
I don't. Did that come up and Gabe?
It's a standard 3-year warranty.
Yeah.
What was that, Gabe?
I believe it's a standard 3-year warranty.
Okay.
What is this, like a Bobcat-sized machine, or?
It's a mini skid steer that it's kind of, you stand behind it. Jason, can you maybe pull up a picture? It'd be helpful to him. I should have included that, gentlemen, but,
And like out of the, obviously the two lowest prices, what we're looking at, is there one that's better, like closer, or like you'd rather deal with one because they're a lot customer friendly, or really doesn't matter either company?
I mean, the lowest price you see is one that's been responsive, and we, feel like we could deal with pretty easily.
Is it the wide track or the narrow track?
Narrow.
Can I ask you a question, Tyler?
Sure.
Well, we save money by using Sourcewell, right? There's no bids with that. Sourcewell gives you one price?
That's correct. That's the Sourcewell pricing that they have there.
So that's a stand from behind that you don't,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's different.
Looks like in the one, you can see it.
It's like a stand-up Bobcat or something.
Yeah. Okay.
This was discussed, since I started, we've kind of thrown the idea around. We were able to get a new truck this year, so that, as far as our fleet goes, was helpful in terms of trucks, but we were thinking of other ways, to help improve our parks. What else can we do in terms of equipment? Currently, we really don't have much to speak of. Everything we use, we kind of borrow from our friends over at Public Works. So this would be an item that would be ours. Of course, we see it being shared with them, but it would still give us a start on a versatile piece of equipment for various projects.
Will the manufacturer, will they do training on that too? Will they give you any type of training? Okay.
I'm sure they could, yes.
Okay, do you think it's necessary or,
I ran this equipment before.
okay,
We've also had several offers to maybe demo a piece of equipment. Our current landscaper has a few in their fleet. They say anytime they want to drop one off, we're welcome. Yeah.
Then, do we have a way to get that from park to park, or will we have to have the Parks Department
We have
borrow
a
a trailer or something?
we have a current trailer that we can use that would work, but I think getting a trailer specific for this at some point in the future would probably be helpful.
That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause, I mean, maybe if we decide to make a motion, that might be as well, to get a trailer along with it, or for the parks,
Yeah.
just a thought.
This would pretty much exhaust our new equipment line item for the year. We would have a little bit of money to contribute to an additional attachment, but we would have to see where to pull money from for talking about a trailer.
yeah, well, maybe down the road, that's a good idea. I like that because the versatility of it. So, all right, consideration to purchase the Toro Dingo TX 1000.
I'll make a motion to go with the Russo Power to purchase the Dingo.
I'll second the motion.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
B, consider donation of haunted house equipment. Mr. Tyler?
Yeah, so Gabe and Russ, they've spent a lot of time recently cleaning up the town's storage building that's attached to the animal control. Several items from the old haunted house events, they're taking up some much-needed space currently in that facility. The haunted house took place at the Lake Hills Clubhouse, which was demolished in 2018. Since the items are no longer of use, we felt it would be a good idea and are recommending for them to be donated to the Cedar Lake Knights of Columbus for that group to use for their Haunted Forest event. We think it'd be nice to see a local nonprofit make use of the items that they've just been kind of collecting dust in the storage facility for the past 3 years now. I believe the council also has this as an agenda item for tomorrow night. Since the haunted house was a town event and not strictly a park event, I think the idea here would be to send the item to them with a favorable recommendation to donate, and then let them decide from there.
All right, consider donation of the haunted house equipment. You have another question?
Where did this equipment come from? Was that what the town bought, or? Was it donated or? The only thing I knew, because that one time PJ's dad, I know, did he donate a lot of this, or is this all ours that we could just get rid of, it won't matter? That's the only thing I'm curious about.
It was donated from another haunted house for some of it, and then some items were purchased.
Okay, so it's, so nobody, there'd be no hurt feelings for
No.
us giving it, okay. I'm good.
Anything else, Patrick?
No.
All right. Consider donation of haunted house equipment.
So moved.
We gotta make it, I'll second. I don't know if you're gonna make a motion or not.
I believe that's a motion by
It is.
Mike Moffett.
It is.
A second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that receives a favorable recommendation from the park board.
C, consider approval of portable restroom contract for 2022 park season.
So this would be with service sanitation. Again, the only additions to this were from Lancer Park. We added one there this year, but it wasn't in last year's contract. We kind of just noticed with the renovated basketball court, the traffic increased over there quite a bit. So they're flexible. We add and remove units every season, but so this item was added. Lancer Park was added as a location, and then the skate park would have a unit as well eventually with the dates to be determined. The price, there was a minimal increase, so the regular units went up $5 per week. Otherwise, the rest of that contract would be the same as prior years.
So are you happy with the contract that's going on?
Yes, we're very satisfied with their service, yes.
You guys got any questions?
I think I'm good. I think we-
And that also includes, Mike, we had the 2 units at Babe Ruth. I
saw that in the
think
T-ball.
last year we just started out with 1, so we're gonna have 2 in the contract, so.
And I saw the T-ball one on there too.
Yeah.
so.
Okay, consider approval of the portable restroom contract for 2022 park season.
I'll make the motion to approve the portable restroom contract for 2022 park season.
I will second that motion.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion opposed? That motion carries.
D, consider approval of broadleaf weed control contract for 2022 park season. Mr. Tyler?
Yeah, so the change in this would be, of course, to add Founder's Park once it is ready for that service with that date to be determined. And there's a cost increase of about $300 total. It went up about $1.20 per acre. And the cost per park is included. So this scope is for one application in the beginning of May, where they do both spring weeds and summer weeds at that time. If we ever feel like we want to add an application to another park, we got 2 applications at Heartland Park this year, for example. We can always get additional applications if we target, parks for them.
And we've had them the last several years, correct?
That's correct, yep.
Any questions? Patrick?
No, sir.
All right, consider approval of the broadleaf weed control contract for the 2022 park season.
I'll make the
With-
motion to approve the broadleaf weed control contract for 2022 with Forever Green.
Oh,
There you go. With Forever Green. Yep, that's what I was looking for.
okay.
I'll second that motion.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 3-0.
E, consider approval of pond treatment proposal for 2022 park season.
This will be with McNamara Aquatic Weed Control. They've maintained and treated our ponds for several years now. You see that price on that contract is the same as, definitely the same as last year. I think it's probably the same as several years going back now.
I don't have any questions on that. Anybody else? All right, consider approval of the pond treatment proposal for 2022 park season. Max,
I'll make the motion to approve the pond treatment proposal for 2022 at McNamara.
I will second that motion.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett, second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Going to item 6, old business, A, Founder's Park.
So I have an updated target construction schedule in your packets. I received this from the contractor today. It's actually updated with the progress through today. But there has been significant progress on site for the past month. They worked on the site concrete and then finished the playground equipment installation. A few winter items include site utilities, the footings for the shelter, and the stone base for the poured-in-place rubber playground surface. Some spring items include asphalt paving, the actual poured-in-place surface installation, landscaping. So we're looking at a late April completion date. That's the current target. And you'll notice in the park docket, there's a bill from Integral Construction for a little over $129,000 this month. That included the structural concrete, the remaining playground equipment, and the installation, site furnishings, and the ongoing earthwork at the site. The first 2 pay requests were actually paid directly by the county. That included the boardwalk, half of the playground equipment, tree clearing, and then some earthwork for that. So that was part of that $85,000 and change we had in CDBG funds. The county paid them directly. I was able to have a lot of correspondence with both the contractor and the architect this past month. I know we discussed this item and wanted to know what was going on. They've had some disagreements that we're working through. We've had multiple site visits to work through some of those issues. But I'm confident that all parties are on the same page now going forward. We saw some progress this past month. So I think everyone's on the same page now.
Yeah, I can say I've been by there, I've seen the progress, so. And I was gonna ask you, Tyler, like, this document for the construction target schedule, have they put everything on there that they've done so far this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty comprehensive schedule here.
Okay, I see the December. That's what I was looking for. Thank you for that. Anything else?
Tyler, did county satisfy the full 85,000 payment?
I'm sorry?
County through the Economic Development Fund, is that done with the CDBG grant?
I know that.
Invoices that they paid, did that
I know the
finalize
pay
all the money?
requests have been submitted to them. I'm not 100% sure if they've been processed. I assume so.
But utilizing the full amount?
Right.
There's not any outstanding funds as part of that
No.
CDBG grant?
No, those first
Excellent.
2 pay requests covered those funds.
Wonderful. Because that was a hard deadline as of the end of the year with
Right.
those CDBG grants, so
It should
That's-
also,
good.
I'm sorry.
Nope,
No,
you're good.
it should also be mentioned that that DNR grant that President Bovat executed, so we have 250,000 of DNR funds coming. What would happen here is once the 129,000 would be part of those funds that get reimbursed back to the town. So, and then we would probably structure it so 120,000 of the next payment would also get reimbursed back to the town. So 250,000 total.
Nice, excellent. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. B, park rules.
So this item we discussed at length last month. I was able to have a few conversations with Chief Flores, and he was supportive of the document we reviewed. A few items came up though that we think maybe needs a little more attention. The first one being the park hours. We had in there from dawn to dusk. We think maybe making more definitive hours would be more helpful for everyone, be a little more easier to understand with dawn to dusk being so vague, especially this time of year where it's like dark at 4:30. That's kind of tough, to enforce. The Chief Flores recommended maybe 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I know a lot of other park departments have a similar approach to their hours. So that's in the ballpark with what other towns are doing. The other item that came up was restricted parking. So we do receive complaints for cars being left in our parking lots overnight. This happens primarily in Lake Hills. We're pretty certain it's residents of the townhomes across the street that are using, that are the ones doing this. So it creates a bit of an issue with cars being left on our property in general, and it also is problematic when we're plowing. That lot can be, it's difficult to plow to begin with, and then you throw a couple rows of cars in there, and it makes it even more difficult. So I believe this could be addressed in the current ordinance, though, from what I understand.
Generally is already where it's not. If you recall, many of the things we talked about before, I'd indicated that there's several items that already are in place that cover the parks as well. It's not where it has to be a separate whole group of ordinances that are only applicable to the parks. Anything that's applicable to the town also, applies to the parks as well. The issue here is just the posting of signs. So one of the things that Tyler and I discussed and he had provided to me was, and I know this was a prior discussion that we've had, is ownership of the parks. And actually, if it's parkland is actually in the name of the Parks Department versus, or Park Board versus the town of St. John, because that's going to determine who's initiating or authorizing signage being put up. But that's something that we'll be able to reconcile with all of this, that will, as I said, is allowed for under the current ordinance as written for parking on town property. And then it's just going to be identifying, I believe, the one or two areas that Chief had brought up, and then if there's any other parks, or if this is just something across the board that, under the current ordinance, that it would be purchasing and installing signs in each of those parks so that the police can ticket and or, tow appropriately. So those, I think that the recommendations from Chief fit in line with what, the proposals that Tyler had already put forth. Feedback at all from, any of you, if you've had the opportunity to go through those in detail, if there's something that can be addressed in a meeting, if it's something you want to set forth a work session on to go through in more detail, really just how it is that you as the board wish to proceed at this point with any other modifications, additions, revisions to those rules as proposed.
Cross that bridge when we get there.
Right.
Kind of a cross that bridge when we get there, I guess, too,
We're there whenever you're ready, is really what it
Okay.
comes down to.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of, the draft as it is, if there's other things that are requested to be added, obviously, once the rules would be, to your satisfaction, then it would be a recommendation to the council to pass, because obviously they have to be, codified by ordinance. And to actually have them be implemented, it's going to take that next step, advertising and all of that at the council level. So it's really just a point of when you want to, proceed on that. If that's a item that you want to address beginning of the year, springtime, whatever it may be.
So as we stand now, we don't really see anything like a significant impasse with your discussions and all. We just have like maybe the, parking at the parks. Aside from that, there's nothing really, would be like an impasse, something difficult.
No, I don't. Like I said before, so much of this is preference. It's just what rules do you want coming out, as the recommendation to the council from the park board. Many of these, there's not, as I've said before, there's not a right or wrong. It's just you as the board reviewing, you know, everything from what activity you want and everything, you know, skateboarding, biking, sidewalks, bike paths, grass areas, what restrictions you want, if any, or you know, like I said, it's not a right or wrong. It's a total preference of how you want, you know, to monitor behavior and actions in the town or in the park areas. So I don't see, to answer your question specifically, there's nothing that I see as being an impasse. I don't necessarily see anything in there that I've even had any loose feedback from the council as, you know, we absolutely want this or we absolutely want that in an ordinance. It's totally just a preference.
And again, the approach, I think, initially for this was to keep it pretty basic, you know. It's obviously a starting point, and if other things come up that we notice, man, we got to address this, and we can always add to it. But this kind of gives us at least a foundation for that section of the ordinance, which, again, hasn't been touched in
I know.
Ever,
years,
really.
Ever.
Ms. Nicole brought up in the last meeting, I think it was, about the varmints and different things. So, yeah, we're due. So,
Very
yeah,
much so.
maybe in January, we can kind of formalize this and get it completed. I think the sooner than the better. You know, like Tyler said, if something comes up that, if we need to adjust, we can do it at that time.
Yeah, it would just be going through the process again. Any modification, once the ordinance would be approved by the council, would take the same process.
Right.
You know,
Us and
all
the
over,
Goins.
yep.
Yep.
But what I can do, kind of knowing that we're sitting at perhaps at least a strong, I would say, draft, is I've refrained from working on any of the conflicting ordinances. That obviously the council would not be able to pass the park section of the code as it currently sits without or as it's currently proposed in draft, without modifying other sections of the existing ordinance, because there's an automatic conflict, which is, you know, in and of itself is going to negate, you know, anything new that you'd be passing. So, but like I said, I've refrained from really taking a lot of action and rewriting those until kind of there was a strong draft that to actually proceed forward on. So if your thought is that we're very close, then that'll kind of be my next order of business, is to focus on those areas so that then the council can advertise and make the amendments to the existing sections, as well as potentially pass the new section or the new chapter at the same time.
So are we at now,
Ready to-
we want to vote on this next month. So what are we asking for you guys to make a final draft, and we'll go over that? And
Well,
then-
absent if there's anything else, I mean, if your belief is that there's not any other revisions that you would be looking to make other than what Chief has proposed, then, I mean, if that's the case, then yes, I can, you know, have it to you in that format for the recommendation to the council, where then it'll, you know, leave from your hands and go to them to take action on probably in the following month.
Yeah, from what I seen, I looked at it, I mean, I didn't see anything that befuddles me, so I mean, I
Right.
would just like to move forward. Guys, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything that I would like to change other than, like you were saying, what Chief Flores was saying about, you know, the restrictions of park closings, you know, the time frame and all that stuff. I didn't know there was a problem of overnight parking for the plowing and whatnot. I mean, that's
Lake Hills
a
has always been
hindrance to the
problem.
town. I'm sorry?
Lake Hills has always been a problem. There's
Yeah.
always cars there, don't know who they belong to, you know. I mean, I understand if it happens once in a while, but it's almost every night.
I mean, so that would be a question I would have to ask if we voted on that, you know, the park is closed to 10 o'clock at night. Does that mean parking lot as well? So then that would give the
Correct.
police officers.
Correct. I believe that's what they're
Yeah,
talking about.
you know.
That would be yes.
Yeah,
That's
and-
what they're
and-
wanting.
Yes, to the extent of, you know, the park property and park access, but as the current code is written for purposes of parking on town property, if we're dealing with that as a non-residential, you know, parking or restrictions in that regard, that's where it would just be the posting of signs. which, like I said, just comes down to the issue of whether or not it's park board property or town property. But as Tyler said, that quite frankly can be addressed as the current ordinance is. I think where it gets complicated for the public is it's the parking lots that are adjacent to your streets in kind of those all-access parks, not the parks that you're driving into, and going back into, that become the questionable area for the public because they just see it as a municipal lot versus, park property or rules that apply to the park. I think that's where the confusion comes in often for people, is they think the green space or the area of, the park is the park and not those exterior lots, and that's where the signage comes in. Just to make it clear to your public, quite frankly.
Oh, definitely.
Well, then with that in mind, I think maybe for January,
Sure.
Tyler, move forward, finalize that.
Sure, I think getting it in place definitely in time for the 2022 park season would be good,
Absolutely.
so.
And if you can, if you have a recommendation in January, in that sense, it gives the council, obviously, to not only review that, but also some companion ordinances for even February into March before the season would really be kicking off. So it gives I think that's a good target in that sense for time frame for the council to actually take action.
Thank you, Ms. Nicole. Any other comments or questions? Item C, adaptive swings. Mr. Tyler?
Sure, we might want to hold off on taking any action on this item since it was Mr. Boersma that had first brought up the idea. But I did get some information together for you guys with some options, and pictures of these options in your packet as well. So the molded bucket seats, those were about $945 each plus shipping. We currently have these at Prairie West Park, and those are well utilized there. The We Go swing, that would be your high-end option. The swing plus the surface plus the installation is a little over $58,000. And then you get into the wheelchair platform swings. The one bay is a little over $3,000, and the two bay is a little over $4,000. Neither one includes installation. So my recommendation, after reviewing a lot of this information, would be the bucket seats. I just think that's the best, most affordable option. We have swing sets in our parks currently where these could be added pretty easily and within those play area dimensions, and then serve the purpose of providing additional inclusive equipment. A few concerns I have with some of the other options, particularly the platform swings, is that they wouldn't be utilized properly. I have some experience with that piece of equipment where unsupervised kids kind of pile on it. And sometimes even supervised kids with their parents watching them would pile on it, swinging back and forth, which is a safety issue for them and other kids that are at the playground at that time. The installer we work with actually considers them a hazard as well, and I think the last one he put in, he said he required the town to sign a hold harmless agreement. So I've heard other park departments having similar issues with that particular model. So that's, that platform option, it really does need adult supervision, and it would be better served to be in a school or like a rehab center or a setting that has ongoing adult supervision, which a public playground just doesn't. So I wanted to give you guys at least some options to ponder, and since we did discuss that a few times here.
Okay, I agree with that, and I kind of think it would be good to have Johnny here also,
Definitely.
so.
I'll make a motion to table it. Do we need to table that,
I
or?
mean, we just discussed.
I'll make a motion to table that until next month, next meeting.
I will second that motion.
That's a motion to table the item by Mike Moffett, second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Item D, community center.
Yeah, this was an item that came up last month as well. Wanted to be sure to have the discussion tonight with you guys. So there's been a change in leadership at Suncrest recently. Their executive pastor resigned. So I think it'll be a good idea to reconnect with them soon to stay on their radar. But a few questions that I have, and I'm not sure if you guys have them as well, but what's the council's appetite for this project, the community center project in general, whether it be Suncrest or a new build? I know we have Wayne's support, but right now I'm unsure like what the council's appetite for it is. Are we going to be provided the necessary resources to operate and maintain such a facility? The utilities at Suncrest alone, from the information we gathered, were a little over $100,000 a year. Personnel-wise, we would need front desk staff, an administrative support position, a programmer, a recreation coordinator. We would need part-time evening and weekend staff. We would need custodians. So the project will substantially increase our operating budget. There was a staffing request I put in for next year, was going to be for an additional full-time employee. That was going to be a hybrid type position that would help me with some administrative support items and then programming and event items as well. That was denied, and I was just asked, how will that be funded because your department doesn't generate enough revenue? Well, to generate revenue, we need revenue generating facilities.
Right.
And we need adequate resources to operate and maintain those facilities. And I know, and I can admit that I can be doing more currently with the resources we have, even though they're limited. But at some point, given the growth of our town and the demand for our services, a commitment needs to be made, for additional facilities and resources to operate them. So perhaps a joint meeting with you gentlemen and the council's in order, or a study session of some sort. But those are the questions I have, and some of the concerns I have is what's the commitment level?
Well, I could speak to the part that I know that in offhanded conversations, I sense that there's support for a community center. And I could be wrong, but that's my belief. I believe there's a support for that. It's been in the 5-year plan for quite some time. We're now just addressing it, and I've never heard any negativity or let's not do this. So my belief is that there is support. Mr. Pondinas, if you can maybe comment on that in to some regard at all, or?
I think there's support for it. When all of us campaigned, we wanted a community center, and that was part of our goal. And there's pros and cons as to Suncrest versus new. But I think Suncrest would be a quicker way, and like Taylor says, it'd be a good way to generate revenue. And it's kind of scary that you're going to get into a big building like that, and he's talking about staff and that. But I think we need to approach the town council and ask them what their view is, and see what they think.
Well, I think that's a good suggestion, but I believe that the park board is in favor of the community center, and I would hope that the town council would be too, and that they would support it.
Yeah, there's been appraisals on that. Most of you guys have taken a tour, and now that there's a change in leadership, that might change a little bit. But I think they were interested. They were interested in selling. The appraisals are in. Just a matter if somebody wants to say yes, let's go forward with it. I think they wanted to be in there maybe a year and a half while they were building their other church. So there could be some problems with it, but they were willing to pay rent for that to the town if they bought it. So I think it's a good idea, but everybody else has to go through the information and decide what they want to do. on the town council side.
That's why I think Suncrest is a unique opportunity for our situation, is that there would be a shared, shared use period, whereas they're starting to phase out of the building, we would phase into it over, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, so to speak. So while they build their new facility. So that's what makes that opportunity specifically pretty unique and could potentially work for our situation.
There's approximately, I think, 16 acres there, 338 parking spaces. There's some green space. You could probably bring the farmer's market there. That would help. You can, the sanctuary part, that would have to be changed over into a gym, where you can have basketball, volleyball. It's doable, and it would be nice. It'd probably be a little quicker than building a building. But again, it has to go before everybody and let them decide what they want to do. You guys are all on board for it. That's great.
And I know they have a facility for daycare. There's options for that. There's potential to do, a lot of things.
Right,
so.
the north end of that building is set up for daycare, when they have their services. So if a daycare came in there and ran that, that's all set up. I don't know what that would generate, revenue-wise, maybe $100,000 a year. I'm just throwing that out there. That could be wrong, it could be more, it could be a little less.
Right.
But that would be helpful. And the south side, there's rooms in there that they could use right away. And then when the service was going on, they'd have to have that building for Sunday services if we were sharing it with the church. And that was a stipulation, which that's probably easy to do.
And those are all things that we'd have to contend with if we decided we wanted to move into that direction. But those are the options. And I don't know, we have the town manager here. And I was just, have you heard anything? I know there had been conversation about this land that might be available. Could you speak to that, or?
At this time, it's pretty much left at where it was left at last. Yeah, no major developments to speak of.
Okay. So I know that's been, for me personally, like over 3 months, so nothing's transpired there. And Ms. Nicole, what do you think our options would be moving forward if we wanted to proceed in this direction with the church acquiring that? What do you?
I think Tyler's right on the mark with, it's going to have to be a joint session, work session perhaps with the council, and/or a presentation, to get on their agenda with a presentation from a member of this board to the council to discuss that in more detail. I'm not 100% sure if, and perhaps Wayne can speak to this, I believe that the information that has come in about Suncrest has gone to the council as well, or whether or not there's areas or information about this potential option that is not, known to the full extent by all the council members. So whether or not, what of that needs to be, shared information of these appraisals, of these, engineering drawings or plans for the facility, any type of funding plans, anything of that nature. There's going to have to be, obviously, many legal steps that would have to be taken for purposes of, the follow through on those appraisals, evaluations, that would allow for the town to even engage into, purchasing anything, or even an option to purchase if that's the case. But it's clearly going to have to first begin with having everyone's, vote yes on this project. So I think until that happens, there's really not a point of this board, expending any money or going further with any other evaluations until you've got that, because clearly it can't be funded here alone.
Right.
So whether or not that would be, as I said, a request for a joint work session, or, a member from this board to introduce this and present it to the council and make that request in person to them at a meeting, would be, whatever your preference is, one way or the other.
Okay, well, maybe we can, Mr. Tyler, maybe we can set something up where you can try and schedule something for the agenda, and maybe we could co-present. We get somebody from the board and Mr. Tyler, if you could help out and
Sure.
make a presentation. You gentlemen feel like that'd be the best way to go?
Yeah, because we gotta do something either way, you know, it'd be nice to know what's going on with the land and, I mean, before we choose something, we gotta know in my opinion, we gotta know the whole, everything that's going on.
You're not going to. It's in litigation, if that's what you're referring to, is that other acreage. That is not, I can assure you, is not going to be something that's going to be resolved in your near future to have an answer to that. It's not even something that the council has an answer to because of the pending litigation.
Well,
So if that's the holdup, my point is you can't push that envelope to get an answer. It's not gonna happen. It's going to happen when it happens. Do you know what I mean? It's not something that's being held up from the council's perspective.
Well, like funding wise, like Tyler was saying, to have somebody working there and whatnot, I mean, we're definitely gonna need.
Yep, those
help
kinds
from
of
town
things.
council.
But I think if you're looking to address it as the Suncrest option, that's clearly something that, you know, you can get a discussion pushed through with the council. But, you know, I know I said this last month too, the other option that I know, or let me rephrase that, the other intention or hope that could be an option, I know for many is, it is what it is at the present moment. It's not, like I said, it's not something that's sitting with the council to just wait for them to pull a trigger on. The basis of the litigation in of itself is what is going to, you know, stall this for as long as it is until that's completed. And unfortunately, that's not something I can put a deadline on for you. I wish I could.
Thank you for that, Ms. Nicole. Maybe we can have a consideration to get something with the town council, Mr. Tyler, for make a presentation for Suncrest.
Sure.
Are we thinking amongst us towards Suncrest? Like, is that what we want to kind of focus on when we meet the town council? Be like, this is kind of what we're focusing towards,
Oh, absolutely.
like a presentation
Because
towards that?
that's all we have right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's our only
the only
option
thing.
right
That's what I'm saying. I wasn't sure if you guys were
Right.
thinking both still.
And they may say alternatively no. I mean, I guess the question becomes, is this a something you want to pursue or not? And if the conclusion is, from this board or from the town council that no, you know, let's say that that's what it is, no, that then it's looking for other options, and then that opens the door to, you know, future, and if that other land is potentially a point someday, but that's not going to be a current, you know, decision that can be made. But I think whether or not to rule in or rule out, you know, Suncrest and to proceed down that path and even pursuing financing, engineering, you know, further bids, appraisals, et cetera, to even spend the money to find out, you know, exhaust how that funding would happen and proceed forward on that. If this board's willing to do it and the council is not, then, you know, that puts an end to the Suncrest question and then opens the door to something else down the road. If they say, this board says yes, and they say yes, then, you know, it's definitely investigating it further and going through those legal steps to see if a deal can actually be reached with the Suncrest, you know, folks.
For a meeting like that, I know since we're announcing it, can we all meet together, like all the council, all the park board?
It would be a
Or does
public
that-
meeting.
Or does it have to be limited, like two or something?
If it was not a public meeting, then yes, it would have to be, you know, limited in that sense, but I would recommend that it's, you know, most times in situations like that, because otherwise you're coming back to the board and reporting back, and then,
Right.
you
Well,
know.
that's, what I was kind of
Yep. To have
going
it,
towards all of us meeting everyone
yep.
that can.
And it's just advertised on, and it's public, it's a work session, you know, and having that option. You know, coordinating that is obviously the flexible part or the difficult part in that sense, but that's where I think it's probably the best to make the presentation or pitch this, if you will, to the council, to then have, you know, them agree, and please, Chris, weigh in, you know, otherwise if I mean, I think that's why I was asking, like, how much they've been involved in the sense of getting all the information across the board of this being the option, or if it's primarily come here, because if that's the case, there may be council members that don't have the full knowledge, and that's where perhaps the presentation to them to say, hey, you know, this is something we're interested in. Will you have a work session with us to discuss this, and or whether or not they're already at that point or have that level of knowledge, do you know?
Well, I can at least say that one individual councilman has a few more months on the job than I do myself here in St. John. So I'm not exactly sure how much information was given to him, since some of these appraisals are a little old now at this point. As far as the other council members that have been here for quite some time, or at least longer period, I'm pretty sure that if they're not completely familiar with it, they should have been at least presented with it when it was presented, is my understanding,
previously.
but I can't verify that as a fact, since I was not here myself to present it to them. I do know that they are at least aware that this is an option, because it was in the 5-year plan that they drafted. It is a very large expense, not only capital-wise in purchasing the property, because you're talking multi-million dollars, but then you're probably talking another multi-million dollar renovation of the property, just to get it habitable for our uses. And yes, that can be staged, but there will likely need to be a bond taken out for that, because we do not have that volume of money in a savings account somewhere. So as Nicole had alluded to, this is going to be a very long and drawn out process if the direction is to go with the community center being at Suncrest, because you got to go through the bonding process, which takes significant amount of time, due diligence, engineering, renovations. As Tyler hinted to, the church will want to stay while they're building. So there's not going to be a complete takeover by that time. So you're going to have to work out an agreement with the church, which I don't think is going to be extremely strenuous or difficult to do. But there's a vast amount of moving parts, and there's also, I think, a desire by some of the council members to have options, and that there's not a necessary need to move quickly on Suncrest because they're not going anywhere right now. They've currently got property. They're going to be, I'm assuming, building at some time. They have not sold their church, and the 40 acres that has been kind of discussed here, I think is still viewed as an option by some of the council members. Now, if I could predict what 5 people are thinking at once at any given time, I would not be here. I would be somewhere making millions at the stock market, probably. But I understand your frustration with that. You have a desire to move the ball forward, and it's been some time since you've discussed it. Unfortunately, this is government, and it's even if you get a yes from one board and a yes from the other, from that point forward, it's still a very long process. And it's unfortunately just kind of, that's the way it's going to be given the funding mechanism that'll have to take place. And then the other component of that will need to be figured out, as also Tyler stated, is the operational funding, because the bond would only cover the initial capital costs and renovations. It will not cover operational expenses. So the operational expenses of making sure you're able to staff a building of that size, cover the utilities, and the necessary day-to-days that will go on there, is another large component of that will greatly impact the town of St. John's budget. So it's, and I hate to throw this out there, but you're also competing with many other departments in the town for, it's a small pie and everybody wants the greatest slice of it. But I think Tyler has presented us with some good information that really helps move the ball forward with identifying those operational expenses that will need to be identified and staffing requirements to help move this forward as an option, because regardless of which option is taken, either new construction or buying an existing building, those operational expenses are still going to be there. And the town council, I believe, understands that. I just don't know if we have an exact number. And it looks like Tyler's coming to a kind of narrowing in on what would be necessary for the Parks Department in order to get that as an option.
So you're saying there's a chance?
So I'm saying there's a chance.
That's what I heard. And I think there is an urgency, because we understand and appreciate that, Chris, but it is a process, so I think the sooner, so.
Well, if I may, some of this urgency is dictated by the residents themselves that I hear from
Yes.
repeatedly. Like, why don't we have these facilities in town? Look at our neighboring communities. Look what they have. Why are we lacking so much? And and I can't speak to the inaction of some of the previous administrations, regarding recreation facilities, but this one has an opportunity in front of it. And, at some point, the town's going to have to make a commitment, to provide our residents with adequate recreation services. And given our current, resources, we're just not anywhere near meeting that demand right now.
I agree. You took the words right out of my mouth, and, the community needs it. They've been wanting it, and it's time, I think, to move forward. And it was good of you to point out, Chris, that it is urgent, and it's a process, so the sooner the better. With that, for the community center, consider a joint proposal to the town council from the park board for the community center.
Definitely.
Making a motion on that, or we just?
Yeah.
So moved. What he said.
A joint session for a proposal for the community center to the town council.
I'll second the motion.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Item 7, reports and correspondence. Staff?
One other item I should mention that could have been under old business as well, but the skate park, we heard from the Spawn Ranch that they're actually planning to do the electrical conduit work this week, which would be for future lighting. Haven't seen them out there yesterday or today, but we received that update last week.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Board members, any comments? Town Council Liaison, Mr. Wayne Pondinas.
I'd like to thank the board members for all your hard work throughout the year, the workers that we have, Tyler, for everything. Christmas in the park was a great success. Movie in the park, the Boo Bash, all that. And last but not least, everybody have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, safe traveling if you're traveling, and we'll see you back here next year.
Thank you, Mr. Pondinas.
Thank you. You as well.
Item 8, payment of the bills.
I'll make a motion to pay the bills as posted.
I'll second that motion.
We need to name an amount there.
Is that the
I
one?
I can say it.
392.
Pay $169,392.33.
Thank you.
That was a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Any public comment? I also would just like to say Merry Christmas to everyone and a Happy New Year. And Mr. Tyler, we thank you for all your efforts. Ms. Nicole, Mr. Pondinas,
Yes, definitely.
and our diligent Chris, the smart guy in the room. So, we appreciate it. All right, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
That's a motion by Mike Moffett and a second by Pat Connolly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.